channel, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP. Welcome to the African History Network show. It is Tuesday, September 14th, 2021, and we are live. We hope everybody's doing well. It's been a very busy day, been a hectic day, and was working a lot of the day producing the content for today's show. Also getting ready for some classes I have to teach this weekend and working on some other things as well. So on today's show, I want to talk about this study that I saw on Friday. This came out Friday, September 10th, 2021, and it was a poll from USA Today Ipsos. USA Today Ipsos poll. Ipsos is a company that conducts surveys. And this deals with the teaching of the history of slavery in schools. Okay. We know there's been so much talk about this the past few months, and we see the attacks on critical race theory, even though critical race theory is not taught in schools. It's a legal analysis basically taught in law schools and graduate schools. But you have various states that have been passing laws and resolutions, things like this, to reduce what can be taught about the history of slavery in schools. Okay. And we've talked about that a number of different times on this show. Well, there's this new study that came out last Friday, shows that 63% of Americans surveyed want children to learn about slavery and the legacy of slavery and the effects of racism. They want this taught in school. 63% of Americans polled said they are in favor of children learning about the lasting effects of racism and slavery in the U.S., while 30% of people polled said they are opposed to children's education learning about slavery and racism and the legacy of racism and the effects of racism, things like this, and legacy of slavery. And 8% were undecided. But 63% say they are for that and want this history taught in schools. So we're going to talk some about this study today. TheHill.com has a good article about it. And then I read also the original article from the USA Today. We've talked about this a number of times on this show. They also deal with critical race theory as well, because 63% of Americans surveyed are in favor of their children learning about the history of slavery, things like this, but only 49% supported their children learning about critical race theory. Okay, 63% support their children learning about the history of slavery and the legacy of and the effects of racism in this country, the lasting effects of racism. But only 49% support the teaching of critical race theory to children. Now, just so we understand, critical race theory is not taught in K through 12 schools. That is a legal analysis taught in graduate schools and law schools, and taught at the college level. It's not taught in K through 12 schools. So we'll discuss this, and we'll talk a little bit about what critical race theory is and what it is not. But the what's taught in schools, it has a lot to do with who is on the school board, who the superintendent is, and who's on the state school boards as well, which are elected positions. So this deals with politics, and this ties into why you have right-wing groups, right-wing organizations who are pushing and coaching and educating Republicans to take over local school boards and gain political power through taking over local school boards, and then they can shut down these conversations dealing with racism and systemic racism and the history of slavery, etc. Okay, so we'll discuss that. Now, also, We talked about this a little bit toward the end of yesterday's show. There's a new, we talked about yesterday that Democrats are revealing a new voting rights bill, a compromise voting rights bill. And we know that the U.S. Senate just came back from recess on Monday. Okay, September 13th, just came back from summer recess. And during the break, we talked about how Senator Chuck Schumer said when they come back from Senate recess, they're going to pick up the voting rights issue and pushing for a vote on the voting rights bill. So during the recess, you had Senators Joe Manchin of West Virginia, Senator Raphael Warnock of Georgia, and others who worked on a compromised voting rights act, The For the People Act, the comprehensive bill, could not get passed in the Senate. And we know the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, they were trying to get that passed in the Senate as well. So Senate Democrats on Tuesday introduced their latest version of a sweeping election reform bill to counter the record number of voting restrictions that have passed in GOP-led states, which they say make it harder for many non-white people, African Americans, Latinos, Asian Americans, etc., and low-income Americans to cast a ballot. The modified bill known as the Freedom to Vote Act, is a compromise after the previous For the People Act failed to pass in the U.S. Senate in June of 2021. Okay, so we're going to talk about what's in this compromise bill, the For the People Act. Will Democrats be able to get 10 Republicans? Will Joe Manchin, because Senator Chuck Schumer put Joe Manchin in charge of getting 10 Republicans to vote for this bill, because most bills in the Senate, you need 60 votes. Well, there are only 50 Democrats. So you need 10 Republicans to vote for this bill. Okay, unless you do a carve out to the filibuster or alter the filibuster rule. Other than that, you need 60 votes. So we'll discuss this now. Today on All In with Chris Hayes on MSNBC, Chris Hayes spoke with Stacey Abrams, okay? Spoke with voting rights activist Stacey Abrams about this new bill. So I'm going to share some of that interview that Chris Hayes did with Stacey Abrams also. All right, which is very interesting. Now, there was one of my Facebook friends, Sister Nana Camille Yarbrough. And Nana Camille Yarbrough is a legendary dance teacher. We were on a virtual panel discussion a couple of weeks ago, honoring Runoko Rashidi, historian and lecturer and anthropologist, world traveler. Runoko Rashidi was a friend of mine, and we've had Runoko here on the show a few times. So we were on a virtual panel discussion together a couple of weeks ago, and she did a Facebook post yesterday, or was it today? I don't know. I didn't have much sleep. I don't know. Was it yesterday or today? I think it was yesterday. I think it was Monday. I saw it Monday when I got off the show. I think got off the air. But she did a Facebook post, and it was of Dr. Carol Anderson. Now, Dr. Carol Anderson is a history professor at Emory University. She's the chair of the African American Studies Department at Emory. I know in 2018 she was the chair. I'm not sure if she's still the chair. I think she is. But she was on the Daily Show with Trevor Noah. This was back in, the clip was from 2018, the Daily Show with Trevor Noah. And she was talking about her new book called One Person, No Vote. One Person, No Vote. And it was dealing with the impact of voter suppression. All right. So what she did was Nana Camille Yarbrough posted this meme right here from The Daily Show. And it has a caption of the segment of this 8 or 9 minute interview that Trevor Noah did with Dr. Carol Anderson. And we've played some clips of Dr. Carol Anderson here on the show before, okay? But this, what they were talking about is voter suppression, and she was talking about Alabama, okay, Alabama. And she said Alabama, she was talking about voter suppression laws in Alabama and how Alabama was putting obstacles in the way of people voting. And she said in Alabama, they said you got to have a government issued photo ID. You got to have a government issued photo ID. And then they said, but your public housing ID does not count. Alabama has lots of public housing. 71% of those in public housing in Alabama are African American. For many, that's the only ID they have. Then Alabama shut down the DMV, the Department of Motor Vehicles, locations in the Black Belt counties. So now people have to go 50 miles to get a driver's license. But if you don't drive, how are you going to go 50 miles and you don't have public transportation? So she went on to say what they do is they create obstacles, and then they create an obstacle to the obstacle, and they make it more difficult for people who are already working their hardest to make it. They make it harder. They make it harder for these people to vote, and make it harder for these people to be able to just access their basic right to vote. So I pulled up that interview. I'm going to share that interview with you because this ties directly into the voter suppression tactics that are being used right now in across the country. 48 state legislatures, 49 state legislatures are pushing voter a little more than 400 voter restriction bills, and they're doing this to suppress the votes, especially of African Americans, but also college students, Hispanics, Asian Americans, etc. And it's interesting she mentioned Alabama because this past weekend I was reviewing information for the 10-week online course that I teach, from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. And this past week, we just talked about the Mississippi State Constitution of 1890, which instituted poll tax and literacy tests. And then this coming weekend, I'm preparing the content for the class, and we're going to talk about the Alabama State Constitution of 1901. And the Alabama State Constitution of 1901 instituted literacy tests and poll tax, and this was to crack down and greatly reduce the number of African Americans who could vote. And these were obstacles to the 15th Amendment after the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in 1898 in the case Williams versus Mississippi that these obstacles to the 15th Amendment were not unconstitutional, because the state of Mississippi was taken to court over their these voter suppression laws. And the U.S. Supreme Court said these voter suppression laws don't violate the 15th Amendment. This is exactly what these former Confederate states are doing today. The same thing that they did in 1898 with Louisiana, 1895 with South Carolina, 1890 with Mississippi, 1889 with Florida, when Florida institutes its poll taxes, the exact same thing that these former Confederate states were doing after Reconstruction ends. This is the same thing they're doing today. We'll talk about this on the other side of the break. You listen to the African History Network show right here on 910 a.m. the Superstation, the Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. All right, stand by. Stand by. Back from break in 4 minutes. How's everybody doing? Share this broadcast on your social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in also. Okay, who still needs to register for the 10-week online course that I teach on Saturdays? This new section started up Saturday, September 11th, this past Saturday. It's 11 p.m. to it's 12 noon to 2 p.m. 12 noon to 2 p.m. From the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. We'll post a link here. Register for the class. As soon as you register, you can watch the class we just did this past Saturday. We have the information at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We do the class live. All the sessions are recorded. You can go back and watch it over and over again. Also, even after the 10-week course is over with, you can still watch the class. Stand by. Back from break in 2 minutes. Still watch the class. Stand by. All right. So class is regularly $130, is on sale for limited time only for $70. And there's bonus content that you get also. Stand by. Back from break in 1 minute. Stand by.
Brother Michael Imhotep and the African History Network show. We deal with current events in history and politics, education, economic empowerment, entrepreneurship, relationships, love, sex, health issues, and much, much more. Unfortunately, many people confuse what racism means. Racism is a power structure. It was laws and policies that put us in this predicament. It's going to be laws and policies that take us out. So when you control the radius of a man or woman's thoughts, you control the compass of his or her actions, because the mind can't do or teach what it doesn't know. We have it all on 910 AM Superstation. 910, the Superstation, Detroit's only African-American talk radio.
Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation, the Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Tuesday, September 14th, 2021, and we are live. Calling numbers 313-778-7600, 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. 313-778-7600. Okay. On the African History Network show, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's correct wrong behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you haven't taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. Very quickly, I want to remind you, you can register for the 10-week online course that I teach on Saturdays. This new section started up Saturday, September 11th. This class is 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. From the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. This is a 10-week online course. Each class we go through and analyze approximately a 10-year period of history to see what happened to us after slavery ended. We also look at what led up to the Civil War taking place, and we go through the Reconstruction era, Jim Crow, World War I, World War II, Civil Rights Movement, the Black Power Movement. Okay, so visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. It's right on the home. Click on register here, and you can enroll in the class. As soon as you enroll, you can watch class number 1. There's other bonus content that you can watch as well. All right. Okay, so we'll talk about that some more and later in the show. I'll let you know some of the topics we talked about in class number 1. All right, I want to go to this first story here. I saw this story Friday, September 10th, and I did not get a chance to talk about it on Friday. I was doing Roland Martin Unfiltered on Friday for 2 hours. We're also going to share a segment from Roland Martin Unfiltered as well, because we were talking about the voting rights bill. Okay, we talked about that on Friday, September 10th as well. Okay, this survey here from USA Today and Ipsos. TheHill.com has an article about this. Over 60% of Americans want children to learn legacy of slavery, poll reveals. So this was a poll of about 2,000 people. And what they found, the majority of Americans say they are in favor of their children learning about the legacy of slavery, and the ongoing effects of racism in the United States, according to a new poll released last Friday, September 10th. Let me increase the size of this here. Okay, so 63% of Americans polled said they are in favor of their children learning about the lasting effects of racism and slavery in the U.S., while 30% of people polled said they are opposed to children's education on the topic. Now, 8% of people who were polled were undecided. Okay, now the results largely split along party lines as well. All right. Now, also what they found is that 49% of Americans polled said that they supported their children learning of critical race theory, while 30% said no. 30% of parents polled were against critical race theory being taught to their children, and 21% were undecided. I wonder who the 30% who are against critical race theory being taught to their children, I wonder who they voted for president. I'm going to take a wild guess. Probably say Donald Trump. Okay, but I don't know for certain, but I think it's probably a safe bet to say that. Now, critical race theory is a decades-old academic field that examines how slavery has lasting impacts on institutions and policy in the U.S. The academic theory has largely been criticized by Republicans who have pushed back against the idea of racism in America. The results in the USA Today poll were sharply divided along party lines. So we've talked about this before. Christopher Rufo is one of these right-wing conservatives who's been distorting what critical race theory is, and he said that they're basically just going to put anything that has to do with race and systemic racism and slavery. They're just going to put all of that under the category of critical race theory. All right. So back March 15th, 2021, Christopher Rufo put out this tweet, which is basically the mantra of the GOP, of the right wing, who are pushing this nonsense. Christopher Rufo, RUFO, said the goal is to have the public read something crazy in the newspaper and immediately think critical race theory. He said, we have decodified the term and will recodify it to annex the entire range of constructions that are unpopular with Americans. So what he's saying is, now this is back March 15th, 2021. What he's saying is one, American people are so dumb, they don't understand history and don't understand critical race theory. So therefore, at least the people that follow them are so dumb that what they're going to do is they're going to hoodwink, bamboozle, lead them astray, and run them amok. And they're just going to put under the category, the umbrella of critical race theory, everything they don't like being taught about racism, systemic racism, slavery, things like this, white supremacy. They're just going to put all that under the category of critical race theory. And the people that follow them are so dumb, they don't know the difference. This is basically what he's saying. Okay, so I want to go to clip number 1 here. This is from CNN. This is dealing with, now this is Kimberly Crenshaw. Kimberly Crenshaw was interviewed by CNN back in May 18th, 2021. And she's explaining what critical race theory is and what it is not. Let's go to clip 1 from CNN, please. Okay, take it off mute. Okay.
Race theory is critical race theory. Critical race theory. No, I don't know. I can guess.
Guessing or not, across the country, a number of politicians are getting it wrong.
Critical race theory is a Marxist doctrine that rejects the vision of Martin Luther King Jr.
Absolutely false.
It's basically teaching kids to hate our country and to hate each other based on race.
False and slanderous.
Meet professor and scholar Kimberly Crenshaw. Crenshaw is one of the founders of critical race theory, which she helped develop in the late 1980s. In short, critical race theory is an approach based on the idea that the history of white supremacy still has a very real and lasting impact on our society and institutions today.
Critical race theory just says, let's pay attention to what has happened in this country and how what has happened in this country is continuing to create differential outcomes so we can become that country that we say we are. So critical race theory is not anti-patriotic. In fact, it is more patriotic than those who are opposed to it, because we believe in the 13th and the 14th and the 15th Amendment. We believe in the promises of equality, and we know we can't get there if we can't confront and talk honestly about inequality.
Critical race theory is not a doctrine. It's not a manuscript. One way of describing it is looking with a critical eye at race and institutions. Let's take an example from history. The Declaration of Independence says all men are created equal. A critical race theorist would note that slavery persisted for almost 100 years after those words were written, and it was more than a century before women got the right to vote. So why is the term causing such a stir in conservative political circles today?
This left-wing nonsense that suggests that any race is inherently inferior or racist or oppressive.
Opponents are concerned critical race theory is or will be forced on students. Supporters say that critical race theory is not based on the view of this race is good, this race is bad. Supporters also say in the wake of protests and calls for racial equality in the past year, those unnerved by it are now using critical race theory as a catch-all term for everything related to race, politics, and education in this country. So says Princeton professor Imani Perry.
I think this is the sort of post-Trump era way of inciting anxiety, fear, and actually trying to sort of elicit a hostility towards the progress that I think we've begun to make in just the last couple of months.
To date, at least 8 states have taken steps to ban topics surrounding critical race theory without naming it, including Oklahoma.
We cannot revert to 100-year-old thinking that a person is any less valuable or inherently racist by the color of their skin.
To be clear, critical race theory does not say someone is racist because of the color of their skin. And it does not say anyone should be ashamed of themselves because of the color of their skin.
Still, some parents who hear the term are speaking out at school board meetings.
Just because I do not want critical race theory taught to my children in school does not mean that I'm a racist, damn it.
But Crenshaw says the theory is not about calling individuals racist, but looking at racism still ingrained in American institutions. And she says we have to talk about it.
If the censoring of all conversation about racism is called racism. That's what this move is really about. It's really not about a theory. It's really not about what's in people's hearts. It's about an effort to shut down all conversation about the sources and the reproduction of racial inequality.
Jason Carroll, CNN, New York.
Okay, thanks. Pause it right there. Great reporting from Jason Carroll for CNN. Okay, so very quickly here, read this article from, we've talked about this before, read this article here from CNN, and it has, they interviewed UCLA law professor and Columbia law professor Kimberly Crenshaw. Critical race theory is a practice. It's an approach to grappling with a history of white supremacy that rejects the belief that what's in the past is in the past. It rejects the belief that what's in the past is in the past, and that the laws and systems that grow from that past are detached from it. Okay, said Kimberly Crenshaw, because we understand that racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race, which comes out of the ideology of European white supremacy. And politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth upon resources and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. No, this stuff is not in the past, because all you have to do is look at the voter suppression laws that are being put in place right now. And this is a repeat of what happened after Reconstruction ended, and the southern states were trying to reinforce white supremacy and suppress the African-American vote. They used violence to do it. It was political violence. They used poll taxes, literacy tests, grandfather clauses, all these things, all white primaries. They use all of this to suppress our vote, which is very similar to what these state legislatures are doing today, especially in the former Confederate states, Georgia, Mississippi, Texas, Alabama, the same thing. Okay. All right. I want to go to, let's go to the second topic here. And we're going to go to, just a second, Shakita, we're going to go to clip number 2. We'll go to clip number 2 from Dr. Carol Anderson. All right. So we talked about this a little bit on the show yesterday, towards the end of the show. And, you know, yesterday we also talked about, when we were off the air and continued on my social media platforms, we gave an update on day 15 of the R. Kelly trial. We'll pick up the R. Kelly trial tomorrow, because I don't have time to get to R. Kelly today. But Senate Democrats have unveiled a new voting rights bill. Okay. This is called the Freedom to Vote Act, the Freedom to Vote Act. And as we've been talking about here on this show, you had, after the For the People Act failed in the Senate, because it couldn't get any support from Republicans. But what'd you expect from those traitors? Senate Democrats, well, during the recess, Senator Joe Manchin and Senator Raphael Warnock and others wrote a revised Voting Rights Act, a scaled down revised Voting Rights Act. So if we look at this reporting from ABC News, Senate Democrats on Tuesday introduced their latest version of a sweeping election reform bill to counter the record number of voter restrictions that have passed in GOP-led states, which they say make it harder for minorities and low-income Americans to cast a ballot. The modified bill, known as the Freedom to Vote Act, the Freedom to Vote Act, is a compromise after the previous For the People Act failed to pass in the Senate last June. Okay, now, significantly, the new bill was crafted by a group that included moderate Senator Joe Manchin, Democrat from West Virginia, who is a key swing vote after he opposed an earlier version of the legislation, charging that it was too broad and lacked bipartisan support. Now, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat from New York, promised a vote on the bill next week, most likely a procedural vote to break an expected GOP filibuster. Now, Senator Chuck Schumer said of this bill, he said, quote, "This is a good proposal, one that nobody in this chamber should oppose." Senator Chuck Schumer said on the Senate floor Tuesday morning, he said, "My colleague Senator Manchin is working with Republicans to secure support for the bill, and we look forward to hearing what changes they might make on legislation." Now, at the same time, as we talked about yesterday, when we look at the reporting here from Rolling Stone, and a lot of people have been talking about this reporting from Rolling Stone, President Joe Biden over the past few days has told Senator Chuck Schumer, Biden tells top Democrats he's preparing lobbying blitz on filibuster reform, voting rights. The president, sources say, has promised to lean on centrists to change the filibuster rules and save Democrats' imperiled effort to pass a new voting rights bill. This is from September 12th, Saturday, September 12th, 2021. With a make or break vote looming in the Senate on a sweeping voting rights and anti-corruption bill, President Joe Biden and his advisors have said in recent weeks that Biden will pressure wavering Democrats to support reforming the filibuster if necessary to pass the bill. Now, we know it was 2 or 3 months ago when CNN had the town hall hosted by Don Lemon. It was the town hall meeting with President Joe Biden. Joe Biden said at that town hall meeting, and very few people picked up on this, he said he was willing to he supported changing the filibuster back to a standing filibuster where you have to stand and hold the floor and continue to speak. Okay, he said he supported changing that. Now, Biden does not have a vote in the Senate. Only people in the Senate have a vote, and if there's a 50-50 tie, Vice President Kamala Harris, who presides over the Senate, has a tie-breaking vote. He can put pressure on senators, but he has no vote in the Senate. Now, according to 3 people briefed on the White House position in its recent communications with outside groups, President Biden assured Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi that he was ready to push for filibuster reform. Biden's pressure would aim to help Senator Chuck Schumer convince moderate Democrats like Senator Joe Manchin, but he's not the only one, to support a carve out to the filibuster, a must for the party if it's going to pass new voting protections without Republican votes. According to a source briefed on the White House's position, President Biden told Senator Chuck Schumer, quote, "Chuck, you tell me when you need me to start making phone calls." All right, read the rest of this article from Rolling Stone. Biden tells top Democrats he's preparing lobbying blitz on filibuster reform, voting rights. Okay, now, let's see here. Back quickly to this article here from ABC. So the Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, Republican from Kentucky, who should have been voted out of office in 2020, but he won re-election. He had a different take on this bill. He said, quote, "Seemingly every few weeks, Democrats take another run at this. This week's latest compromise is just a compromise between the left and the far left. It's the product of Washington Democrats negotiating with each other about how much power they should grab." Now, this is the same guy that ran through Amy Coney Barrett in 8 days, shortly before the 2020 presidential election, actually after early voting had already started. This jackass is going to talk about a power grab. Moscow Mitch is going to talk about a power grab, who blocked Merrick Garland, President Obama's Supreme Court nomination in 2016, okay, to leave that to leave eight people on the Supreme Court, as opposed to filling that Supreme Court nomination and giving President Obama a Supreme Court judge. And then he was hoping that Trump would win. And this the same guy, this is the same Mitch McConnell that blocked 103 federal judge nominations that President Obama made, which left this vacancy when Trump became president through way of the Electoral College, because he lost the popular vote twice. And then Trump got 225 federal judges confirmed through the Senate, through the Republican-controlled Senate. And these are lifetime appointments. And Mitch McConnell wants to talk about a power grab. McConnell has done away with the filibuster to get judges confirmed. He wants to talk about a power grab. So lion-ass Mitch McConnell went on to say it contains many of the same fatal flaws as their previous attempted takeovers that have already fallen flat. Okay, this is the same guy that supported the traitor-in-chief Donald Trump, the insurrections. So read the rest of this nonsense from Mitch McConnell. Read the rest of this article. Senate Democrats introduce new voting rights bill. All right, now, keep in mind, Mitch McConnell is the same evil genius that mentored Daniel Cameron, the spineless attorney general of Kentucky, who refused to prosecute police officers for shooting and killing Breonna Taylor. That's the same Mitch McConnell. I want to go to this clip here. This is clip number 2. So on the Daily Show back in 2018, Emory history professor Dr. Carol Anderson, who's a professor of African American Studies, and she's the chair of the African American Studies Department at Emory University. She's an author also, brilliant sister. She's the author of the book White Rage. And back in 2018, her new book was One Person, No Vote. One Person, No Vote. Okay. And she was on the Daily Show, and they talked about voter suppression here with Trevor Noah. Let's go to this clip.
It's so wonderful having you here. You wrote a book called White Rage, which was a New York Times bestseller, where you spoke in depth about how America is dealing with an issue that it really hasn't dealt with completely, which is the rage that many white people feel at what appears to be America changing. This book is I guess, based in some way off of that, and yet it's a completely different topic. One person, no votes. Voter suppression destroying our democracy. How bad and how big do you believe voter suppression actually is?
I think it is massive. We have had millions of people blocked from voting. We have had millions purged from the rolls who have been on the voter rolls. The purging and the voter suppression has been so intense that we have Donald Trump in the White House right now. That's the power of voter suppression.
The numbers in the 2016 election, especially in and around the black vote, were really interesting. You saw in key states and swing states where voter turnout dropped from, may have been like 78,000 people turning out and dropped to below 50,000, or, you know, you saw drastic drops. Now, some people have argued that was because Hillary Clinton didn't motivate black voters to come out. But you've looked at the data, you've analyzed a lot of the information, and it seems like there's been a systematic effort to remove people of color from the voting roll.
Right.
Why people of color, though?
And I believe why people of color, besides being just snide and saying, it's been that way for a long time, it's because that after the 2008 election with Barack Obama brought 15 million new voters to the polls with that incredible ground game.
Wow.
They were overwhelmingly black, Latino, young, poor, and with that, then the Republican Party that has moved further and further to the right and has become more and more white, and their policies have become more right-wing, they don't have policies that resonate with the growing diversity of America.
Right.
And so instead of thinking about how do we reform this party so that it resonates with America, that our policies are really strong and talk about benefiting more Americans, instead what they decided to do was to suppress the vote.
There were some really scary parts of the book where I read about things I never knew before. I knew about the larger picture of voter suppression in certain states, in certain cases. Mm-hmm. But you read about how so many people have been stripped of their rights. Now, the argument the other way from people like Chris Kobach, from Donald Trump and his team has been, we're protecting democracy. That's why we scrub people of voter rolls. If they've died, if they no longer respond to mail, then why are we keeping them on the voter rolls? How do you respond to that?
Yeah, I respond to that because one of the ways that this works and why it's so effective is that they're able to use that cover of being reasonable. We're just keeping the voter rolls up. But when you really look at what they're doing, is that those people that they're scrubbing, they're not scrubbing people who have moved or who have died overwhelmingly. Overwhelmingly, who they're scrubbing are people who are African Americans, people who are young, people who are poor. And they're doing it by the characteristics. So they can't say, we don't want black people to vote, because there's still this thing called the 15th Amendment. Right. Although the Voting Rights Act got gutted by the Supreme Court, there's still this thing called the 15th Amendment. So what they do is they go after the characteristics of the people, societally imposed characteristics. They go after those things like if you move a lot, and we know that people move a lot, particularly if you're poor, you don't stay in the same house.
Right.
That moving then becomes a reason to knock people off the roll. They say, and one of the things that we also know, characteristics, is that young people, minorities, and students, they don't vote regularly. So they start knocking people off the rolls for not voting regularly. And so they use those characteristics, and those are the characteristics of people who don't overwhelmingly vote for Republicans.
Okay. You skip over that commercial and let's go back to the clip. This is Dr. Carol Anderson from Trevor Noah Show. This is from October 8th, 2018. She's talking about her book, One Person, No Vote, and Voter Suppression. Okay, we can go back to the clip.
When you look at the numbers and you look at how impactful this could actually be, the argument is always met with, yes, but look at how much voter fraud there is. Now, we talked briefly about this, but overwhelmingly, most Americans believe that voter fraud is a very definite threat.
Absolutely. And that has been a well-cultivated myth. It was born up out of the 2000 election, that horrible election with Hanging Chad.
Right.
And that myth of massive, rampant voter fraud coming out of the cities, stealing our elections. Except when they really went hunting for it, they couldn't find it. Justin Levitt, a law professor out of California, he looked, and he went from 2000 to 2014. Out of 1 billion votes, he was able to identify 31 cases. 31 out of 1 billion votes of voter impersonation fraud. When Chris Kobach, the Secretary of State that you mentioned, who helped head up Trump's Election Integrity Commission, in their report, which was all about when Trump said 5 million voters have come in and I would have won the popular vote.
That's a great Trump evidence.
Thank you. When he said, he's got 5 million, then they went hunting and they couldn't find it. I mean, the pages are blank. When it says voter fraud, his commission is looking, blank pages. It's not there. When Greg Abbott out of Texas is arguing for voter ID, and Judge Ramos is saying, okay, you've got rampant voter fraud. Where? And he's like, it's rampant. She's like, where? How many? It's a lot. Rampant. How many? 2. And I'm like, is that rampant?
The argument I've seen a lot of people parrot with a lot of confidence is, it's not suppression. What we're doing is making sure that the integrity of our election is maintained. And so they say, we're not purging people or we're not restricting them from voting. We're just saying that everyone needs a voter ID. Now, I understand it, but if you were explaining to someone who is genuinely well-intentioned, someone who says, I don't understand, why is it so so hard, or why is it so difficult for the government to say, well, why is it so bad for the government to say everyone should have a voter ID that is issued by the government or at the DMV? Why is that so much to ask?
Okay, so let me just give you a couple of examples about how that really works. Because part of, again, the way that it sounds so reasonable, because you need an ID, you know, what Trump said, you need an ID to go buy groceries.
Right.
But as we all know, it doesn't quite work that way. So, for instance, in Alabama says you got to have a government-issued photo ID. And then said, but your public housing ID does not count. Now, Alabama's a poor state. They've got lots of public housing. 71% of those in public housing in Alabama are African American. For many, that's the...
Okay, those watching here on Facebook and YouTube, keep watching on my Facebook fan page, The African History Network, and my YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep. We're going to keep broadcasting there. We'll finish this clip and we'll squeeze in one more topic, I think. We're out of time here on 910 AM Superstation WFDF. Visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can register for my new 10-week online course that meets on Saturdays, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. From the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. Okay, right now it's correct. Wrong behavior is not over till we win. Wakanda forever. And we'll talk to you tomorrow. Peace. All right, stand by. Okay, let's continue here. Let me cue this up. Who needs to still register for the new class on Saturdays? As soon as you register, you can watch class number 1, from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. And before we get out of here, I'll do a brief, like 5-minute overview of what we talked about in class number 1. Okay, let me cue this clip up here. Just a second here. Okay, gonna get past it. Stand by.
People, or we're not restricting them from voting. We're just saying that everyone needs a voter ID. Now, I understand it, but if you were explaining to someone who is genuinely well-intentioned, someone who says, I don't understand, why is it so hard, or why is it so difficult for the government to say, well, why is it so bad for the government to say everyone should have a voter ID that is issued by the government or at the DMV? Why is that so much to ask?
Okay, so let me just give you a couple of examples about how that really works. Because part of, again, the way that it sounds so reasonable, because you need an ID, you know what Trump said, you need an ID to go buy groceries.
Right.
But as we all know, it doesn't quite work that way. So for instance, in Alabama said you got to have a government issued photo ID. And then said, but your public housing ID does not count. Now, Alabama's a poor state. They've got lots of public housing. 71% of those in public housing in Alabama are African American. For many, that's the only ID they have. So you automatically wiped away that type of government issued photo ID, because public housing is government issued.
Right.
Okay. Then Alabama shut down the Department of Motor Vehicles in the Black Belt counties. And so now people are going to have to go 50 miles to get a driver's license. But if you don't drive, how are you going to go 50 miles? And you don't have public transportation. So what you do is you create an obstacle.
Right.
And then you create an obstacle to the obstacle. And you make it so difficult for people who are already working their hardest to make it, to now be able to just access their basic right to vote. We see this in state after state. North Carolina, the Fourth Circuit said, you have targeted African Americans with nearly surgical precision. So these states, they make it sound innocuous. Oh, you need an ID, but it's not any ID. In Indiana, you need to have a driver's license to get a birth certificate. But to get a birth certificate, you need a driver's license.
That's brilliant. let's look to the future.
Yes.
We have elections coming up.
Yes.
You have midterms happening in America. You also have the presidential election, which will be on its way shortly after that.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything people on the ground can do? What can people do to protect their votes?
Yes, absolutely. So there are several things. One is you have to register to vote. And there are organizations that are on the ground helping people like get the identification, get the documents they need in order to get the identification. Organizations like Vote Riders that are doing that work. Also, when you're registered, check your the Secretaries of State's voter registration page to make sure you're registered to vote, because they are notorious for purging people off the list, even close to an election.
Wow.
So you think that you're registered to vote, you go in to vote, and boom, your name's nowhere there, and then you're getting the runaround.
Right.
So that checking regularly, I check every week, and then I print off a copy so that I've got documentation that I am actually registered to vote and that this is my polling place. I think the other thing is really important is to help others so that you're volunteering, you've got election poll workers and you're paying attention to what's happening at the polls when somebody's getting the runaround. I think that is really important as well. And there are organizations like the Lawyers Committee that's doing that incredible work. So that's what we can do. And register. The deadline is coming up in early October. Register to vote, because we cannot be part of the solution if we're just sitting there and not participating.
One person, no vote is available now. Scary and fascinating. Carol Anderson, everybody.
All right. So that was Dr. Carol Anderson. That was Dr. Carol Anderson on The Daily Show with Trevor Noah. That is from October 8th, 2018. That's on YouTube, Daily Show's YouTube channel. Okay. So before we go to the next track, because I'm going to squeeze in the clip from when I was on Roland Martin Unfiltered, another segment from when I was on Roland Martin Unfiltered from Friday, September 10th, because we were talking about the Voting Rights Act and the new Voting Rights Act and trying to get the bill passed. But before we go to that, breaking news story out of California, Governor Gavin Newsom has staved off a recall election spearheaded by Republicans over mask mandates and trying to protect people's lives and things like this. He defeated the GOP frontrunner, idiotic brain damage Larry Elder, Black Republican, Black conservative. Just you listen to Larry Elder, it's like, what plantation did he escape from? He's just brain damaged. Larry Elder probably would have turned in Harriet Tubman because he said she was stealing white people's property. He probably would have turned in Harriet Tubman. Newsom cruises to victory in recall election. Will stay in office, NBC News projects. I'm getting alerts from a number of different news sources here. Washington Post. Let me see. I'm looking at the alerts here. Just a second. News alert. California Governor Gavin Newsom is projected to prevail in his effort to remain in office, according to Edison Research. That's Washington Post. We have NBC. And let me see who else we have here. Okay. Voters supported the California governor efforts to mitigate the COVID pandemic, according to exit poll results. Yeah, because they want to live. Because they want to live, and a lot of these Republicans who are in office and things like this, who are pushing and against against either vaccine mandates or even mask mandates. Most of those Republicans have been vaccinated themselves. Most of those Republicans have been vaccinated themselves. You got Fox News. Fox News has a vaccine mandate where you had to be vaccinated to work at Fox News. Because they're saying, look, you ain't going to come in here and get everybody sick. And then people have to quarantine, or some people may die. So there was a press conference probably about 2 months ago now that Republican members of the House of Representatives had, encouraging people to get vaccinated, after many of them were either discouraging people from getting vaccinated or putting out conspiracy theories or not denouncing conspiracy theories. Representative Steve Scalise of Louisiana was there, the guy that got shot a few years ago. Steve Scalise was at the press conference encouraging people to get vaccinated, but they're not encouraging Democrats. They're encouraging Trump supporters. That's what they're really doing. They're encouraging Trump supporters to get vaccinated because I think some of them finally realized what I've been saying here on the show. It's like, wait a second, if we keep lying to these dumbass people and they keep believing us and they don't protect themselves from COVID and they keep dying, it's not going to be enough people to vote us back into office. We're going to get voted out of office because we're killing our own constituents. We're killing the people who keep following us. I think they had a meeting or something and they realized, you know what? Okay, we can't, if we keep lying to these dumbasses and they keep believing us, we're going to kill the people that keep voting to put us in office. So I think at some point they realized, you know what? We're gonna have to come out here and like act halfway intelligent on this. Let me see if we can pull this up. You know, okay, I'll try to find that. I was looking at I'm on Instagram. I'm looking at Joy Ann Reed's page on Instagram because I follow her on Instagram. You can follow me back, Joy. Let me see. She just posted about Larry Elder. Oh yeah, let's look at this post here from Larry Elder. So Larry Elder can crawl back under whatever rock he came from. So California, let's see how we do this here. So California rejected Larry Elder. Weird that a large racially diverse state doesn't want to be led by a guy who thinks George Zimmerman is a hero. Okay, hold on, the wrong one. That's the next one. Doesn't want to be led by a guy who thinks George Zimmerman is a hero. Stephen Miller should be president. Stephen Miller, the white supremacist advisor to Donald Trump. The Stephen Miller looks like something's wrong with him. That's Stephen Miller. Stephen Miller should be president. Slave owners deserve reparations. COVID should proliferate, and the minimum wage should be zero. California rejected the GOP challengers, Caitlyn Jenner and Larry Elder and whatever other idiots they came up with. But that's good news because see, Larry Elder said that now Senator Dianne Feinstein, who needs to retire, but Dianne Feinstein is like 85 years old. Larry Elder said if he gets a chance to replace Dianne Feinstein, if she retires before her term is out, if something happens to her, she becomes incapacitated, if she dies, he said he will replace Dianne Feinstein as U.S. Senator from California with a Republican. He said he wouldn't hesitate to do that. I don't think people really realize the power that governors have. Okay, if he replaces Dianne Feinstein with a Republican, do you realize that means that Mitch McConnell will be back in control of the U.S. Senate because it would be 51 Republican U.S. senators to 49 Democratic U.S. senators. Okay, which would really overturn the vote of the people in the previous election that gave Democrats a 50-50 majority. It's a slim majority, but 50-50 majority and somewhat control over the Senate. But the governor, a Republican governor, can change that. I don't think people really understand how much power a governor has. And so that would mean that Mitch McConnell would be back in control of the U.S. Senate, and he would block President Biden's Supreme Court nominations, federal judge nominations, like he did Barack Obama in 2014 and 2016. All this stuff, police reform, all that stuff, that won't even come to the floor for a debate, because the Senate Majority Leader controls which bills come to the Senate floor for a debate. That stuff ain't even coming to the floor for a debate. So people started realizing, like, the consequences of what happens when you got a dumbass like Larry Elder as governor, and Larry Elder's already telling you what he's going to do. They're like, oh, hell no. No. Okay. So this is a tweet here from Dran Reed. She has another one here. Because, okay, is this one about Nicki Minaj? All right. It's, okay. She did one about, we'll play the segment of her show that she did today in response to Nicki Minaj responding to her. We'll talk about that. And Nicki Minaj promoting conspiracy theory to 22 million social media followers. It was just, you know, Nicki revealed that she has COVID and stuff like this, but some of this stuff is just irresponsible, just ridiculous. Okay, so we'll talk about that tomorrow. All right. But Governor Gavin Newsom. Now the other crazy thing is this re-election, this recall election, I should say, this recall election in California is costing taxpayers $300 million. It's costing taxpayers $300 million because of like because Republicans got 1.5 million signatures. You had people disgruntled, people running around dealing with conspiracy theories like this. It's costing taxpayers $300 million for this recall election. California Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom staved off an attempt to remove him from office prevailing in the state's unusual recall election Tuesday, NBC News projects. Governor Newsom faced serious headwinds and multiple crises as polls over the summer showed him in real jeopardy, but Newsom, with the help of party leaders like President Joe Biden, succeeded in rousing Democrats voters with a message that warned a Republican replacement would roll back COVID protections and betray the state's famously progressive character. The recall election asked voters to decide whether Newsom should be removed with the options of yes or no, and gave voters who wanted to see him ousted the choice of 46 alternatives. There's 46 people running for governor. The front runner has no experience. I don't think Larry Elder has held any political positions. If he did, it's probably a disaster. He's going to be governor of the largest state in the country. Yeah, okay. All right. Newsom from the beginning sought to portray the recall as a right-wing power grab, but struggled to get Democratic voters to pay attention until the entrance of a controversial conservative radio talk show host, Larry Elder, who jumped into the race late and immediately shot to the top of the polls of replacement candidates. Because Larry Elder has been doing radio for years. So people in California, like Republicans in California, know him. So he had name recognition. Okay. Registered Democrats outnumber registered Republicans in California nearly 2-1. So the only way the recall could succeed was if Democrats did not bother voting or got behind the effort to remove Gavin Newsom. In the end, the state's liberals showed up in droves to back the Democrat and keep California out of the hands of someone like Larry Elder, who is, some people say he's to the right of Donald Trump, but he's an ally of Donald Trump. People are like, oh, hell no. National Democrats hope the race can be a model for next year's midterm elections, since Democrats have typically had a hard time motivating their voters in non-presidential races. Okay, read the rest of this. We'll talk about this some more tomorrow. All right. Okay, so we got that from we got that from Instagram. Now, okay, very quickly, then we'll go to this segment from Roland Martin Unfiltered. Okay, so this past Saturday, September 11th, was and before we go to that, also, hey, if you like this type of information, you can support the African History Network, $ the AHN show through Cash App, $ the AHN show through Cash App, also through PayPal, paypal.me /the AHN show, paypal.me /the AHN show, and at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Okay, so we're here 6 days a week. The substance keep doing the research, stay on the air, keep broadcasting. Our official Cash App account is $ the AHN show, SHOW. And when you go to it, it'll show my name. It'll say Michael and show our picture there as well. Okay. Okay. All right. And we got it. So we have that, and also through PayPal, paypal.me / the AHN show. Okay. So we got a interesting. This comes in this late. We got a breaking news story here. Department of Justice asks federal judge to block enforcement of Texas abortion law. Okay, usually stories don't come this late. This Washington Post is reporting on this. I'm looking at, I monitor about 35 different news sources daily, and I get alerts from news sources all throughout the day and night, for that matter. So this story just broke. Justice Department asked federal judge to block enforcement of Texas abortion law. We'll talk about this tomorrow. The Justice Department has asked the federal judge to grant a temporary restraining order or injunction that would prevent Texas from enacting a law that bans nearly all abortions in the state, heating up a battle between the Biden administration and Texas Republicans led by Governor Greg Abbott. The Justice Department argued in a court ruling late Tuesday, September 14th, that Texas had adopted the law known as Senate Bill 8 to prevent women from exercising their constitutional rights. The move comes less than a week after the Biden administration sued Texas to try to block the nation's most restrictive abortion law, which bans the procedure as early as 6 weeks into pregnancy and allows private citizens to take legal action against anyone who helps a woman terminate her pregnancy. In Tuesday's emergency filing, the department argued that even though the Supreme Court has ruled that, quote, a state may not prevent any woman from making the ultimate decision to terminate her pregnancy before viability, Texas has banned abortions months before viability, at a time before many women even know they are pregnant. Read the rest of this. We'll talk about this. Probably talk about this on tomorrow's show. Breaking news story. Justice Department asked federal judge to block enforcement of Texas abortion law. Okay. Now it is, let's see here. Now, what is the rule in the brief? The brief said Texas deprived the Texas law took effect in other states. Dozen other states have passed legislation banning abortions about 6 weeks into pregnancy. Okay. So we'll hear more about this. Okay, but that's a breaking news story. All right, now, the class I teach on Saturdays, we had class number 1 that just started up. It started up Saturday, September 11th. This class is 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. From the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. From the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. All right. Hey, Susan, thanks for the support, Susan. Chesley, Susan, thank you. Okay, let's look at this here. And I'm still gonna try to find that article. Dealing with holding that press conference for vaccinations. They were in support of vaccinations. But we had a great class Saturday, September 11th. And we go through and deal with history after the Civil War ends. And we go, each class, we go through and analyze approximately a 10-year period of history to find out what happened to us. What were the laws and policies put in place? What happened to us after slavery ends? Reconstruction era, we look at advances that we were making, but then also how those advances, how all that is reversed as well. Okay. So if we look at here, I just want to do a quick recap of what we covered in class number 1. Just a second. Let's try to zoom in on this here. Okay, so here's some of the things we talked about in class number 1. We dealt with what led up to the Civil War taking place. Okay, what led up to the Civil War taking place, and we talked about the Louisiana Purchase of 1808. And with the Louisiana Purchase, the U.S. gets they get 828,000 square miles of land for less than 3 cents an acre. So we looked at the Louisiana Purchase of 1803, the U.S. buying this land from France, and it's going to double the territory of the U.S. And the U.S. is going to carve out about 15 states and out of that territory, and it's going to increase the need for enslaved Africans in those states where they decided to have slavery. So, and the Louisiana Purchase comes about because the French are waging the Haitian Revolution, and they're trying to raise money to fight the Haitian Revolution. So they sell all that land for about $15 million. Now, we also talked about the Texas becoming a state in the Union in 1845. And Texas comes into the Union as a slaveholding state. Texas wins its independence from Mexico in 1836. We dealt with the Mexican-American War of 1848 to 1846. We also talked about Manifest Destiny. And Manifest Destiny is basically the U.S. is the Europeans here in the U.S., their idea that through providence, through their divine right from God to spread capitalism and democracy in North America and to take over the entire North American continent. This is Manifest Destiny. So you have Manifest Destiny, and that term is coined in 1845 by John L. O'Sullivan. And then that concept predates 1845, however. The concept predates 1845, but you're going to have the Mexican-American War the next year in 1846. Mexican-American War is 1846 to 1848. And this is going to lead to the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo of 1848, which ends the Mexican-American War. And as part of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, the U.S. is going to get the territory that makes up the states of California, Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, Utah, and Nevada. They get all this from Mexico. All right. And then as a result of the Mexican-American War, because of this new territory, now you're trying to figure out which states are going to have slavery, which states are not going to have slavery, etc. So you have what's known as the Compromise of 1850. How many people are familiar with the Compromise of 1850? And the Compromise of 1850 it consists of 5 bills. And a number of those bills deal with the new territory and determining whether or not they're going to have slaves, etc. But also, one of the most important bills in the Compromise of 1850 was the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850. The Fugitive Slave Act of 1850, which we see depicted in the movie Harriet. And the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850 went even further than the Fugitive Slave Act of 1793, and it causes more runaway slaves to have to then run into Canada. All right, so we have the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850, and then also we also talked about the Kansas Nebraska Act of 1854. The Kansas Nebraska Act of 1854 left it up to people moving into those new Western territories. It left it up to them to determine whether or not they had slavery, as opposed to it being dictated to them by the federal government. And then this is going to lead to what's known as Bleeding Kansas between about 1854 and 1855, which was armed conflict in the Kansas territory, armed conflict between pro-slavery groups and anti-slavery groups, and they're fighting and killing each other. Okay, it's called Bleeding Kansas. So we talked about all that, and there was some more things we dealt with in class number 1. All right, so you can register for the 10-week online course at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. As soon as you register, you can watch class number 1. We do the classes live. All the sessions are recorded. You can watch them anytime. You still have access to the classes after the 10-week course is over with. And it's regularly $130. It's on sale right now, $70 for a very limited time only. So we just posted the link here so you can register there for it. Okay. So very quickly here, I want to go to, I was on Roland Martin Unfiltered on Friday, September 10th. We talked about a number of different topics. One of the things we talked about was the trying to get a new Voting Rights Act, Voting Rights Bill passed, and passed in the Senate. Okay. And the Senate was on recess, and when it came back from the Senate, that was going to be the first thing that they took up, the Voting Rights Act. We talked about this a few minutes ago, dealing with the new the Freedom to Vote Act, the Freedom to Vote Act, and if we go back and look at this article quickly, it shows also what's in the bill. Changes in the newly negotiated election reform bill. The new bill still encompasses sweeping election laws, from voter ID requirements, expanded early voting, making election day a national holiday. And let me see something here. I think we have a graphic. I think we also have a graphic of this as well from MSNBC, All In with Chris Hayes. Did we? Oh, where is that? Okay. Hold on. Okay, so you have making Election Day a national holiday, banning partisan gerrymandering, and implementing election security and campaign finance measures. But among the provisions dropped or changed in this is the automatic mailing of ballots. Under the new measure, any voter may request a mail-in ballot, but they are not sent automatically. The legislation will continue to allow voter roll purges, but requires changes to be, quote, done on the basis of reliable and objective evidence, and prohibits the use of returned mail sent by third parties to remove voters. This is a tactic that's used, I think is in Ohio, to they will send a piece of mail, certified mail or something like that. They'll send a piece of mail to an address, and if it comes back like return to sender, they'll send it once again. If it comes back again, they'll purge that person from the voter rolls. This is what this is addressing. Okay, they do that in Ohio, and I talked about this in the lecture I did dealing with African American resistance in the era of Donald Trump, voter suppression, reparations, and how elections have consequences. I talked about this in that lecture. All right, but I want to go to, so read the rest of this here. We'll talk about this some more tomorrow, most likely. Senate Democrats introduce new voting rights bill. This is from ABC News, September 14th, 2021. Okay, I want to go to this clip here from Roland Martin Unfiltered. We were talking about, this was Friday, September 10th, and we were talking about the new voting rights bill being written and getting it passed in the Senate. Let's go to this clip.
That means that they'll be back in the minority. That means you won't have Speaker Nancy Pelosi. That means they will not be in charge of the House. It's a 50-50 right down the Senate. They could lose the Senate. So they could wake up after the first Tuesday in November and face the realization that they only control the White House, which means Republicans will control the legislative agenda. If you don't do it now, you may not do it a year from now.
Absolutely. Well, not only would Republicans control the legislative agenda, if, God forbid, they take back control of the House and especially the Senate, but Mitch McConnell would block Joe Biden's Supreme Court nominations, like he did with President Barack Obama in 2016 with Merrick Garland. He would block Joe Biden's, most likely, his federal judge nominations, like he blocked 103 federal judge nominations from President Barack Obama when Democrats lost control of the Senate in 2014. So we really have to understand this history that just happened in the past few years. But I've said this before on this show. I think Democrats have to swing for the fences, and I'm neither Democrat nor Republican, but they have to swing for the fences. But the conversation dealing with the Voting Rights Act, and I know you know this, Roland, and everybody here on this panel knows this. This is not just a black issue. If it's just framed, I understand that, we voted and got Biden in office, but if it's just framed to the Senate, there's only 3 black people in the Senate. Well, 2.5, because half the time Senator Tim Scott don't act like it. Okay, there's only 2.5 black people in the Senate. If this is just framed as a black issue, we're going to lose. As I said before, this is a 15th Amendment issue, it's a 19th Amendment issue, and it's a 26th Amendment issue. All these white women that are crying about, and I understand what happened in Texas with abortion bills. They need to be sticking their foot up Joe Manchin's behind, as well as Kristen Sinema's behind, because this affects their votes as well. This is not just a black issue. African Americans only make up 3.5% of the population of West Virginia. Okay, but there's a whole lot of white women in West Virginia. All right, so we have to really expand this issue, and there has to be different interest groups. The women's reproductive rights, the disabled Americans. There are 38 million disabled Americans who are registered to vote. When you talk about restricting mail-in ballots, this impacts disabled Americans negatively, regardless of race. Okay, so I know we understand this here on this panel, but the pressure has to come from all different sectors on the Senate. And it's not just Manchin and Sinema that are against changing the filibuster. There's some other ones who are not as prominent, who are hiding in the shadows. Okay, so we need to kick their behinds.
Okay, so that's an excerpt from Roland Martin Unfiltered. That is from Friday, September 10th. Okay, Friday, September 10th. You can watch that at Roland Martin on Facebook, Roland Martin on YouTube, and also the new Black Star Media, the Black Star Media app. Download that from Android, iPhone. It's on Roku. Okay, the Black Star Media app. Okay, download that also, and you can watch all the shows. That's Roland's new streaming network, the Black Star Media app. Okay, now there was let me see, where is that? I found this the graphic I was looking for also here dealing with voting rights. This is from All In with Chris Hayes. And this shows what's in the Freedom to Vote Act, some of the things in the Freedom to Vote Act: automatic voter registration and online voter registration, and to make Election Day a public holiday. It'll give at least 15 days of early voting for federal elections. Same day voter registration. It will also, you'll also have same day voter registration. Minimum standards for vote by mail and drop boxes. Expand voting opportunities for underserved communities. All right. Okay, this is one of the articles I was looking for. There was one from NBC News that I saw. I can't find it right now, but this one right here. This is from New York Times. This is from July 22nd, 2021. House Republicans soft pedal push for COVID vaccinations amid rising infections. House Republicans soft pedal push for COVID vaccinations amid rising infections. There's Representative Steve Scalise there, some other Republicans from the House of Representatives. House Republicans use call for vaccinations to push inquiry. House Republican leaders and doctors gathered Thursday morning. So this is July 22nd. Yeah, July 22nd. To get vaccinated against the coronavirus amid rising infections across the United States, but they used the event to attack Democrats who they said, without proof, had dissembled about the origins of the virus. The appearance by the second and third ranking Republicans, Representative Steve Scalise of Louisiana and Elise Stefanik of New York, alongside a dozen doctors, suggested that a resurgence in the spread of the virus, driven by the more contagious Delta variant, had not prompted the party to change its tone. Steve Scalise and Stefanik instead blasted Democrats for what they call a cover-up on behalf of the Chinese Communist Party. Only when pressed by reporters did the leaders address vaccination. Only when pressed by reporters did the leaders address vaccination. Representative Steve Scalise of Louisiana, Republicans, I would encourage people to get the vaccine. He said that near the end of the event, when pressed about his position on it, he said, I have high confidence in it. I got it myself. Interesting, it took him so long to get to that point during the press conference. That's why you held that's why you held the press conference. That's why you had the doctors there, right? He and other Republicans spent most of their time on Thursday discussing unproven claims that the Chinese had released a virulent human-made virus on the world and charging that Democrats had ignored it. Wasn't it Trump that played down the severity of coronavirus in the first place? That was Trump that played down the severity of coronavirus. That was Trump, who was on Fox News saying coronavirus is like the flu. So read this article here from the New York Times. It's from July 22nd, 2021. All right, look, we have to get out of here. Thanks for tuning in. Remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world. Because right now it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. I'll be Saturday, September 17th, Saturday, September 18th. I'll be at the second annual Detroit African Cultural Festival. Second annual Detroit African Cultural Festival, Maharis Gentry Park. We'll put this on our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. So this is coming up Friday, September 17th, 12 noon to 6 p.m. and Saturday, September 18th, 12 noon to 8 p.m. And I'll be speaking on Saturday, somewhere between 3 p.m. and 5 p.m. I'll be speaking on Saturday. Okay, so we'll put this on our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can also visit the website of the Detroit African Cultural Festival, DetroitACF.org, DetroitACF.org. All right, this is a free event, and they'll have vendors, African dance, music, all different types of things there. And we'll have a vendor booth there also for the African History Network as well. Okay, we have to get out of here. Right now, it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. And we'll talk to you tomorrow. Peace. Thanks for tuning in.